The lower decks of the GSS Horizon's Edge always smelled like oil and burnt circuits. Jiho didn't mind. He had worked in worse places. The massive merchant ship carried goods and people across the galaxy, and someone had to keep the engines running. That someone was usually Jiho. He was a human, one of only two aboard a ship with over 300 crew members from dozens of different alien species. Most of them barely noticed him. He fixed broken pipes, repaired damaged circuits, and kept to himself. He spoke only when necessary. He ate alone in his quarters. During his free time, he disappeared into the maintenance tunnels where nobody else wanted to go. The other crew members thought he was strange. Humans were still new to the galactic community. They had joined only 20 years ago, and most aliens still saw them as weak and unimportant. Jiho seemed to prove them right. He was quiet, thin, and never caused trouble. Perfect prey for bullies. Davin was the worst of them. The Krellian enforcer stood nearly 7 feet tall with thick purple skin and muscles that could bend steel. He controlled the lower decks through fear and violence. His gang of thugs followed him everywhere, laughing at his jokes and helping him terrorize anyone weaker than themselves. For the past 3 months, Davin had made Jiho his favorite target. It started small. Stolen food rations, tools hidden or broken, insults shouted across the mess hall. But Davin grew bolder when Jiho never fought back. Last week he had dumped a bucket of wastewater on Jiho's head in front of everyone. The human had simply wiped his face, picked up his tools, and walked away. The crew watched these incidents with a mixture of pity and disgust. Some felt bad for Jiho. Others thought he deserved it for being so weak. Nobody helped him. In the harsh reality of space, you learn to mind your own business. Today started like any other day. Jiho woke at 0600 hours dressed in his gray maintenance uniform and headed to the engine room. He had a list of 17 repairs to complete. A cooling valve needed replacement. Some power conduits showed signs of wear. Basic work that kept the ship running. He was halfway through fixing the cooling valve when Davin and his gang arrived. There were 4 of them today. They blocked the only exit from the engine room, grinning like predators who had cornered their prey. "Well, well," Davin said, his voice booming in the enclosed space. "Look who's here." The little human playing with his toys, Jiho didn't look up. He continued working on the valve, his movement steady and precise. He had learned long ago that showing fear only made things worse. Davin stepped closer. "I'm talking to you, insect. Show some respect." "I'm working," Jiho said quietly. "This valve needs to be fixed or the engines will overheat." "I don't care about the engines." Davin grabbed Jiho's toolbox and threw it across the room. Tools scattered everywhere, clattering against the metal floor. "I care about you learning your place." Jiho watched his tools scatter. Something flickered in his eyes just for a moment. Something cold and dangerous, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. He stood slowly, facing Davin with that same calm expression he always wore. "Is there something you need?" Jiho asked. "I need you to understand something," Davin said, poking Jiho's chest hard enough to make him stumble back. "Humans are weak. You're weak. You don't belong here. Every time I see your pathetic face, it reminds me how soft your species is. No strength, no courage, just scared little animals pretending to be civilized." The other thugs laughed. One of them, a Veltus with 4 arms, added, "My people say humans cry when you hit them. Is that true?" "I wouldn't know," Jiho said softly. Davin's grin widened. "Want to find out?" He raised his massive fist. Before he could swing, a voice echoed through the engine room. "That's enough!" Everyone turned. Hana stood in the doorway, her hands on her hips. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and grease stains on her engineering uniform. She was the only other human on the ship, and unlike Jiho, she wasn't quiet. "This doesn't concern you," Davin growled. "He's my colleague," Hana said firmly. "And you're wasting time. Captain Yura wants a status report on the engines in 10 minutes. If they're not working because you idiots are playing games, she'll throw all of you in the brig." Davin hesitated. Captain Yura was a Velkar with a reputation for harsh discipline. She didn't tolerate troublemakers, and even Davin knew better than to cross her directly. "This isn't over," he said, pointing at Jiho. "We'll finish this later." He and his gang left, their heavy footsteps echoing down the corridor. Hana watched them go, then turned to Jiho. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Jiho started picking up his scattered tools. "No, you're not." Hana knelt down to help him. "This has been going on for months. Why don't you report him, or fight back, or do something?" It's not worth it. Not worth it? He treats you like garbage. He humiliates you in front of everyone. How is that not worth fighting back? Jiho stood, his toolbox now full again. He looked at Hana with those calm, unreadable eyes. Some battles aren't worth fighting. And some wars were already won. What does that even mean? He didn't answer. Instead, he returned to the cooling valve and continued his work. Hana watched him for a moment, frustrated and confused. There was something about Jiho that didn't add up. The way he moved was too precise. The way he stayed calm under pressure seemed almost unnatural. And sometimes, when he thought nobody was looking, his eyes held something that made her uncomfortable, something ancient and cold, but she pushed those thoughts away. Jiho was just a maintenance worker, a quiet gentleman who avoided conflict. Nothing more. Hours later, alarms began screaming throughout the ship. Red emergency lights flooded every corridor. The intercom crackled to life with Captain Yura's voice tight with tension. All crew to emergency stations. We have multiple hostile vessels on approach. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Jiho stopped working. His hands, which had been steady moments before, now trembled slightly. Not from fear, from something else. He looked toward the ceiling as if he could see through the hull to the ships outside. The Bloodfang raiders had arrived. Pirates. Killers. They were famous across this sector for their brutality. No survivors, no mercy. Just death and profit. Crew members ran past, panicking, shouting, trying to reach their stations. Hana appeared beside Jiho again, her face pale. What do we do? Jiho set down his tools carefully. Get to the safe zones. Help anyone who needs it. What about you? He didn't answer. He walked past her, heading toward his quarters. His steps were different now. Not the shuffling walk of a maintenance worker, but the measured stride of someone with purpose, someone with training. In his small room, Jiho opened a locked storage container hidden under his bed. Inside was something he had hoped never to see again. Military-grade combat armor, black as space itself, weapons that looked more like art than tools of war, and a helmet with a faded skull painted on the visor. On the side of the container, barely visible in the dim light, were words in Earth's old military language, Grim Reaper unit, authorization level, maximum. If found, run. Jiho stared at the equipment for a long moment. Then he began putting it on piece by piece. The armor fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for him. When he placed the helmet on his head, something changed. The quiet maintenance worker disappeared. In his place stood something else entirely. He checked his weapons one by one. Everything was still functional. Still deadly. He had maintained them in secret for years, hoping he would never need them again. That hope had just died. Outside, the pirates were beginning their assault. Inside, the Reaper was waking up. The voice that came through the ship's communication system was deep and cruel. It belonged to Warlord Tazrek, leader of the Bloodfang Raiders. His reputation was known across 3 sectors of space. He was a Thraxian, a species of massive warriors who lived for combat and conquest. Attention, cargo vessel, Tazrek's voice boomed. You are surrounded. Power down your engines and open your docking ports. Resist, and I will space every living thing on your ship. You have 2 minutes to comply. On the bridge, Captain Yura gripped her command chair. Her green Velkar skin had gone pale. She had dealt with pirates before, but never the Bloodfang Raiders. They were different. They were monsters. Captain, her communications officer said, voice shaking. Should we try to negotiate? Tazrek doesn't negotiate. Yura replied bitterly. He takes everything and kills anyone who resists. We have no weapons, no military escort. We're merchants, not soldiers. She closed her eyes. Open the docking ports. Maybe if we cooperate, he'll let some of us live. Throughout the ship, crew members heard the order and felt their hope die. Some began praying to their gods. Others gathered their loved ones. A few tried to find places to hide, though everyone knew it was useless. The Bloodfang Raiders always found everyone. Security Chief Mira, a Tyrellian with blue-scaled skin, tried to organize a defense. She distributed the ship's few weapons to volunteers. Stun batons, 2 plasma pistols, some mining tools that could be used as weapons. It was pathetic. They were merchants and engineers, not warriors. In the cargo bay, Davin and his gang huddled behind storage containers. The big Krellian who had terrorized Jiho for months now looked like a scared child. His hands shook. His purple skin was slick with nervous sweat. "We need to hide," one of his thugs whispered. "If we stay quiet, maybe they won't find us." "They'll find us," Davin said, his voice hollow. "They always find everyone." All his bravado was gone. Without weaker people to bully, he was nothing. The pirates began boarding. Their ships latched onto the horizon's edge like parasites. Cutting torches screamed as they burned through hull plating. Then came the sound of heavy boots. Lots of them. The boarding parties were Sarkarian shock troops. Each stood 7 feet tall with natural armor plates covering their bodies. They carried massive weapons designed to cut through both metal and flesh. They moved through the corridors like a plague, killing anyone who resisted and capturing everyone else. In Corridor C7, a squad of 5 Sarkarians cornered a group of crew members. Hana was among them, pressed against the wall with a dozen others. An older Velkar engineer stepped forward, raising his hands in surrender. "Please," he begged. "We're not armed, we surrender. Just don't hurt anyone." The lead Sarkarian laughed. It was a horrible sound, like metal scraping on metal. He raised his plasma cutter. "Warlord Tazrek wants examples, you're first." Hana screamed. Others closed their eyes. The Velkar engineer waited for death. But death didn't come for him. Instead, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. And from the shadows, a voice spoke in perfect Sarkarian language. "You have 10 seconds to leave this ship." The Sarkarians spun around, weapons raised. Their leader scanned the darkness with his weapons targeting system. "Who said that?" "Show yourself!" 9 seconds, the voice replied, still calm. Still cold. "You dare threaten us?" The leader laughed again. "We are Bloodfang raiders. We fear nothing, especially not one hiding coward. Come out and die like a warrior." 5 seconds. I tried to be polite. Or what, little insect? The voice turned even colder. Or I stopped being polite. Something moved in the shadows. Fast. Too fast. The first Sarkarian didn't even have time to scream. One moment he was standing. The next, he was on the ground, his weapon torn from his hands. The second pirate tried to fire, but his shots hit nothing. His partner fell beside him. The remaining 3 Sarkarians backed against the wall, firing wildly into the darkness. The red emergency lights flickered, shadows danced, and one by one, the pirates fell. It took less than 30 seconds. When it was over, silence filled the corridor. Then he emerged from the shadows. Black armor covered him from head to toe. On his helmet, a skull grinned in the red light. He moved like water, smooth and unstoppable. In his hands, weapons hummed with deadly energy. Hana stared. She knew that build, that way of moving. "Jiho?" The armored figure turned toward her. Through the skull visor, she couldn't see his face, but she knew it was him. Somehow, the quiet maintenance worker had become this: a warrior, a killer, something that moved through trained soldiers like they were children. His voice came through the helmet speakers, distorted but recognizable. "Get to the safe zones, all of you, now!" The crew members scrambled to obey, running down the corridor. But Hana remained frozen, unable to move, unable to process what she had just witnessed. Jiho approached her slowly. Up close, he was terrifying. The armor was covered in scars from old battles. The weapons he carried looked custom-made for killing, and that skull on his helmet seemed to watch her with empty eyes. "I'm sorry you had to see this," he said quietly. "What are you?" Hana whispered. "Something I hope to leave behind." He turned away from her. "Go. More are coming." "But you're just a maintenance worker. You fix pipes and engines. How can you—" "I was other things before I fixed pipes." His voice held old pain, old memories. "Things I'm not proud of. Now go. I have work to do." Before Hana could respond, alarms blared again. More pirates were boarding. Jiho's helmet turned toward the sound. Through the ship's communication system, panicked voices reported boarding parties in 3 more sections. The crew's improvised defenses were failing. People were dying. "Stay here," Jiho ordered. Then he ran, not the careful walk of a maintenance worker, but the sprint of a trained soldier. He moved so fast that Hana lost sight of him in seconds. She stood alone in the corridor with 5 dead pirates. Her hand shook. Her mind raced. Nothing made sense. Jiho, the man who never fought back against bullies, had just killed 5 armed soldiers in seconds. He moved like a professional killer. He spoke like he had done this before, many times before. Who was he really? What secrets had he been hiding? On the bridge, Captain Yura watched her security feeds in disbelief. The pirates were encountering resistance in the lower decks, not from her security team, from something else. Someone else. The camera feeds showed brief glimpses, a figure in black armor, moving through pirates like death itself. Squads that had terrorized countless ships were falling silent, one after another. "What is that?" her first officer asked, pointing at a screen. "I don't know," Yura whispered. But something in her memory stirred. Stories she had heard, legends from Earth's early years in the galactic community. Tales of elite warriors who had fought in humanity's darkest war. Warriors who were supposed to be gone, dead or disbanded. Warriors called Reapers. Security Chief Mira burst onto the bridge, her blue scales flushed with excitement and fear. "Captain, I've been accessing Earth's military databases. There's something you need to see." She pulled up files on the main screen. Most of the information was redacted, hidden behind security classifications. But enough remained to paint a terrifying picture. "The Reaper program," Mira read aloud. "Experimental Warfare Division. Created during Earth's integration war with the Vryn Empire. 12 operatives, enhanced capabilities, specialized in asymmetric warfare and targeted elimination. Status: terminated." Captain Yura's eyes widened. "Terminated? When?" 15 years ago, after the war ended. Officially, all Reapers were decommissioned and their enhancements removed. Their records were erased. Mira hesitated. "But there are rumors. Some say a few Reapers survived, changed their identities, disappeared into civilian life. And one of them has been fixing our engines for 6 months," Yura said quietly. She looked at the security feeds showing the carnage in the lower decks. No wonder he never fought back against Davin. It wouldn't have been a fight. It would have been murder. In the cargo bay, Davin heard screams echoing through the walls. Pirate screams. The sounds of weapons fire and desperate shouts in alien languages. Something was hunting the hunters, and it was coming closer. "We need to move," one of his gang members whispered. "Find a better hiding spot." But Davin couldn't move. He was paralyzed by a horrible realization. That quiet human he had tormented for months, the one who never fought back, the one everyone thought was weak. He was out there now, killing professional soldiers with ease. And Davin suddenly understood that every insult, every attack, every humiliation could have been his last. Jiho had let him live. Had chosen mercy over violence. Not because he was weak, but because he was strong enough to show restraint. The Krellian had spent months taunting death itself, and death had simply smiled and walked away. Until now. The pirates started calling it the Ghost. They didn't know what else to name the thing hunting them through the ship's corridors. It appeared from nowhere, struck with deadly precision and vanished before they could react. Squad after squad went silent. Their last transmissions were filled with weapon fire, screams, and then nothing. Warlord Tazrek listened to these reports from his flagship with growing fury. He had raided hundreds of ships, killed thousands of people. Nobody had ever fought back like this. Nobody had ever turned his elite warriors into frightened prey. "How many have we lost?" he demanded. His second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Crix, checked his datapad. 27 confirmed dead, 15 more missing, all in the lower decks. By what? How many defenders do they have? According to surviving squad members, just one. A figure in black armor with a skull on its helmet. It moves like nothing they've ever seen. Tazrek slammed his fist on his command chair. One soldier is killing my warriors. What species? They say it's human, warlord. The massive Thraxian laughed. A human? Those weak, pathetic creatures? Impossible. My warriors are just panicking. Send more troops. Overwhelming force. I want this ghost crushed. Inside the horizon's edge, Jiho moved through the ship like he owned it. And in a way, he did. He had spent 6 months learning every corridor, every vent shaft, every hiding place. He knew this vessel better than anyone. That knowledge was now a weapon. He didn't just kill the pirates. He broke them psychologically. He left messages scrawled in their own languages on the walls. Warnings, promises. He arranged bodies in ways that would terrify their comrades. He made sounds in the darkness that turned hardened warriors into frightened children. This wasn't just combat. This was war. The kind of war he had been trained for 15 years ago. The kind that destroyed empires and toppled governments. The kind that made humanity too dangerous to attack. In Engineering Section 7, he found another boarding party. 12 pirates, heavily armed, moving in a tight formation. They had learned from their fallen comrades. They watched the shadows. They covered every angle. They were professionals, it didn't matter. Jiho had fought better soldiers than these. He triggered a trap he had set hours ago. An overloaded power conduit exploded, filling the corridor with smoke and sparks. In the confusion, he struck. 3 pirates fell before the others even realized they were under attack. The remaining 9 opened fire, but Jiho was already gone, circling around behind them. Their leader, a Vorgath warrior with 4 eyes and reinforced armor, spotted movement and spun around. Too slow. Jiho's blade found the weak points in his armor with surgical precision. The leader fell and his squad broke. They ran, abandoning their formation, abandoning their training, abandoning everything except the desperate need to escape. Jiho let them run. Let them spread fear to the others. A terrified enemy made mistakes, and he needed them to make mistakes. In the cargo bay, Davin heard the fleeing pirates run past his hiding spot. They were shouting in their own language, but the fear in their voices needed no translation. Something had broken these hardened criminals. Something had turned proud warriors into running cowards. One of Davin's gang members whispered, "Maybe we should help them, join forces against whatever is out there." But Davin knew better. He knew who was out there. He had spent months tormenting that person, stealing his food, breaking his tools, humiliating him in front of everyone, and that person had endured it all with calm silence. Not because he was weak, but because he was strong enough to choose peace over violence, until someone threatened innocent people. Then peace was no longer an option. Davin made a decision. A stupid, desperate decision. He activated his communicator and hailed the pirate command channel. After a moment, a rough voice answered. "This is Crix, second in command of the Bloodfang Raiders." "Who is this?" "My name is Davin. I'm a crew member on this ship. I want to make a deal." Silence. Then Crix laughed. "You want to make a deal? You have nothing we want. I know who is killing your soldiers. I know where he lives. I know his routines. I can help you capture him." That got their attention. "What do you want in return?" "Safety for me and my crew. Let us leave when this is over. That's all." Crix considered this. He was losing too many warriors. The warlord was growing angry. If he could eliminate this threat quickly, it would save lives and resources. "Agreed, tell us what you know." Davin provided coordinates to Jiho's quarters. He described the ship's layout around that area. He told them about maintenance tunnels and access points. He gave them everything they needed to set a trap. When he finished, Davin felt sick. He had just betrayed the only person on the ship who had never truly hurt him. Yes, Jiho could have killed him at any time, but he hadn't. He had shown mercy, and this was how Davin repaid that mercy. But survival came first. At least that's what Davin told himself. Crix assembled a special team. 15 of the best warriors remaining. Heavy weapons. Combat shields. Overwhelming firepower. They surrounded Jiho's quarters from every angle. Even a ghost couldn't escape this trap. They breached the door with explosive charges. The room filled with smoke. When it cleared, they found only civilian clothes, a few personal items, and a datapad on the small desk. Nothing else. No armor, no weapons, no human. The team leader approached the datapad cautiously. On its screen was a simple message in standard galactic script. "Looking for me." Then the trap sprung. Jiho had turned the entire section into a killing ground. Explosive charges hidden in the walls. Power conduits rigged to overload. Ammunition stores placed strategically throughout the area. everything connected to motion sensors and remote triggers. The first explosion took out 5 pirates instantly. The second caused a chain reaction. Fire and shrapnel filled the corridor. The combat shields absorbed some damage, but not enough. Not nearly enough. The survivors tried to retreat, but Jiho was waiting. He emerged from a maintenance shaft above them, dropping into their midst like an angel of death. At this range, with enemies disoriented and wounded, the fight was over in seconds. One pirate, a young Sarkarian who looked barely old enough to fight, recognized the skull insignia on Jiho's helmet. His eyes went wide with terror. He had heard stories from older raiders, legends from before his time. "Reaper," the young pirate whispered. "You're a Reaper. But you're supposed to be gone, dead, disbanded." Jiho looked at him through his helmet's skull visor. "We were never gone. Just sleeping." His voice was cold, final. "Now run. Tell your warlord what you saw here. Tell him what happens when humans are pushed too far." The young pirate ran. Jiho let him go. Sometimes one survivor spreading fear was more valuable than one more corpse. In the cargo bay, Davin heard the explosions. Heard the screams. Then heard running footsteps coming toward his position. The surviving pirate burst into the cargo bay, wild-eyed and panicking. He saw Davin and the other hiding crew members. "Run!" the pirate shouted. "It's a Reaper. A real Reaper. We're all dead." He didn't stop. He kept running toward the docking ports, desperate to get back to his ship. Davin felt his blood turn to ice. A Reaper, he knew that word. Everyone in the galaxy did. They were Earth's bogeymen. Elite warriors who had terrorized the Vryn Empire during humanity's integration war. Soldiers who could destroy entire military installations alone. Killers who made whole armies retreat in fear. And Davin had been bullying one for 3 months. Stealing his food. Breaking his belongings. Mocking him in front of everyone. He had tormented death itself and lived only because that death had chosen mercy. Now that mercy was gone. The Reaper was awake. And Davin had just helped pirates try to kill him. The Krellian's hand shook. His purple skin had gone pale. For the first time in his life, Davin understood true fear. Not the fear of pain or punishment. The fear of something inevitable. Something unstoppable. Something that was coming for him and wouldn't be denied. In the shadows of the cargo bay, red emergency lights flickered. And in that flickering light, Davin saw a shape. Black armor. Skull helmet. Moving with terrible purpose, Jiho had come for him. The Reaper had come to collect. Davin ran. He abandoned his gang. Abandoned his pride. Abandoned everything except the desperate animal need to survive. He ran deeper into the cargo bay, between storage containers and equipment crates, anywhere that might offer shelter from the nightmare pursuing him. But running was useless. The Reaper knew this ship, knew every hiding spot, knew every exit. There was nowhere to go, nowhere that would offer safety. This wasn't a chase. It was an inevitable conclusion. Davin finally collapsed behind a large container, gasping for breath. His heart hammered in his chest. He pressed against the cold metal, trying to make himself as small as possible. Maybe Jiho would pass by. Maybe he would focus on the pirates instead. Maybe there was still hope. Then he heard it. The sound of boots on metal floor, slow, measured, walking, not running. The Reaper wasn't in a hurry. He had all the time in the world. The footsteps stopped. Right on the other side of the container. So close that Davin could hear the slight hum of Jiho's armor, could hear his breathing through the helmet's filters. A voice spoke. Calm. Quiet. The same voice that had endured months of abuse without complaint. But now it held something else. Something ancient and cold. "Hello, Davin." Davin couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The voice on the other side of the container was so calm, so patient. Like a teacher waiting for a student to answer a question. But this was no classroom. This was a reckoning. Jiho walked around the container slowly. When he came into view, Davin saw him fully for the first time. The black armor was covered in scorch marks and scratches from recent battles. The weapons holstered on his body were still active, still humming with deadly energy, and that skull helmet turned toward him with empty eye sockets that seemed to stare into his soul. "I'm not here to kill you," Jiho said quietly. Davin gasped. Relief flooded through him. "Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I never knew what you were." "I know you didn't." Jiho knelt down, bringing himself to Davin's level. Up close he was even more terrifying. That's the only reason you're still alive. Every time you hurt me, every time you humiliated me, I could have ended you in a heartbeat, but I chose not to. Do you understand why? Davin shook his head, unable to speak. Because strength isn't about hurting people weaker than yourself. Real strength is choosing not to hurt them even when you can. You spent months trying to break me. You couldn't. And that should have told you everything about who was really weak. Jiho stood. You helped the pirates set a trap for me. You gave them information that could have gotten innocent people killed. That was a mistake. But I'm going to let you live with that mistake. Let it haunt you. That's punishment enough. He turned to leave, then paused. Stay here. Stay quiet. When this is over, you'll be discharged at the next port. And Davin, if we ever meet again, remember this moment. Remember the mercy I showed you twice. There won't be a third time. Then he was gone, disappearing into the shadows like a ghost. Davin remained on the floor, trembling. He had been given something precious. A second chance, a life he didn't deserve. And he would spend the rest of his days trying to forget the skull helmet and the quiet voice that had judged him and found him wanting. On the bridge, Captain Yura received an emergency transmission from Warlord Tazrek himself. His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. Captain, you have something aboard your ship that belongs to me now. A ghost that has killed over 40 of my warriors. I want it stopped. I want it captured. Or I will destroy your entire vessel. You have 5 minutes to surrender this creature or everyone dies. Yura's face went pale. She opened a ship-wide channel. This is the captain. If there's someone aboard fighting the pirates, please respond. The warlord is threatening to destroy the ship. Silence. Then a click as someone opened a communication channel. Jiho's voice, calm and steady, filled the bridge. Captain, this is Jiho. I'm handling the situation. Keep the crew in safe zones. I'll take care of the warlord's threat. Jiho, he's threatening to kill everyone. He has weapons locked on our hull. What can you possibly do against an entire pirate fleet? Watch. Then the channel closed. Jiho accessed the ship's main communication array. He broadcast a signal on an old Earth military frequency, a frequency that hadn't been used in over a decade, a frequency that only certain people would recognize. The signal contained a simple code. Reaper 7, Ghost Protocol active. Heavy enemy presence. Requesting immediate support. Somewhere in deep space, a hidden military monitoring station received the signal. Alarms began screaming. Officers scrambled to their stations. Within seconds, encrypted messages were being sent to a classified fleet that officially didn't exist. A fleet that had been created for one purpose, to protect the Reapers when they needed help. Because even ghosts sometimes needed backup, but the fleet was 18 minutes away. Jiho needed to buy time, and he knew exactly how to do that. He made his way to the docking port where an emergency escape pod was stored. It was small, barely big enough for 2 people. But it would serve his purpose. He modified it quickly, installing stealth technology from his Reaper equipment. The pirates would never see it coming. Then Jiho did something that seemed insane. He launched himself toward the pirate flagship. Alone. Unarmed except for his personal weapons. One man against a ship housing over 200 pirates. On the bridge of the horizon's edge, Captain Yura watched the escape pod's trajectory on her sensors. What is he doing? That's suicide. Security Chief Mira looked at the data. Captain, the pod is using some kind of stealth system. The pirates can't detect it. He's going to board their flagship. One man against their entire crew? He's not a man, Mira said quietly. He's a Reaper, and they were designed for exactly this kind of mission. The pod approached the pirate flagship from below, where sensors were weakest. Jiho used a waste disposal port to breach the hull. It was a method so audacious that nobody would think to guard it.
Why would they?
Who would be crazy enough to enter a ship through its garbage chute? A Reaper would. That's who. Inside the flagship, Jiho moved like smoke through the corridors. His objective was clear: disable the weapon systems and eliminate the command structure. Without weapons, they couldn't destroy the horizon's edge. Without leadership, they couldn't coordinate an effective response. He reached the weapons control room first. 4 guards stood watch, heavily armed and alert. They never knew what hit them. Jiho moved through them like water, silent and unstoppable. Within seconds, he was at the control console, working quickly to lock out the primary weapon systems. Alarms began screaming throughout the ship. The crew realized they had an intruder, but they didn't know where, didn't know how many, didn't know what they were facing. Warlord Tazrek roared with fury.
Find them, kill them!
I want their head on my wall. Hunting parties spread through the ship. Dozens of armed pirates searching for one intruder. But Jiho was always one step ahead. He used maintenance tunnels, air vents, service corridors that the pirates had forgotten existed. And everywhere he went, he left death in his wake. A squad of 8 pirates cornered him in a narrow corridor. Perfect conditions for them. Terrible conditions for him. They opened fire, confident in their numbers. But Jiho didn't retreat. He charged forward, using their own bodies as cover, moving faster than they could track. 8 seconds later, the corridor was quiet again. The pirates began to understand what the crew of the Horizon's Edge had learned. This wasn't a soldier. This wasn't even a warrior. This was something that had been created specifically to turn superior numbers into meaningless statistics. Jiho reached the bridge after 20 minutes of constant combat. He was tired. His armor was damaged. One of his weapons was depleted. But he was still standing, still moving, still fighting. The bridge doors were heavily reinforced, designed to withstand boarding actions. But Jiho had prepared for this. He placed shaped charges on the hinges and stepped back. The explosion blew the doors inward, and he rushed through the smoke into the command center of the pirate flagship. Warlord Tazrek stood in the center of the bridge with his elite guard. 8 massive warriors, the best fighters in his fleet. They had served him for years, surviving countless battles. They were legends among pirates. They lasted 2 minutes. Jiho moved through them like he was dancing. Every movement served a purpose. Every strike found a weakness. These were the best warriors the pirates had to offer, and he dismantled them with terrifying efficiency. Not because he was stronger, not because he was faster, but because he had been trained by the best military minds humanity had ever produced. When the last guard fell, only Tazrek remained. The massive Thraxian drew his plasma axes, weapons that had cleaved through armor and bone for decades. He was a veteran of 100 battles. He had killed more beings than he could count. None of that mattered. Jiho disarmed him in 3 moves. Moves so fast that Tazrek barely saw them coming. The axes clattered to the floor. Jiho swept the warlord's legs and drove him to his knees, one hand pressed against Tazrek's throat, holding him in place. Then Jiho removed his helmet. The skull visor fell away, revealing his face. Just a man, an ordinary human with tired eyes and an expression of deep sadness. "You wanted to know what I am," Jiho said quietly. "I'm what humanity became when you pushed us to the edge, when you made us choose between extinction and evolution. I'm a Reaper, the thing your species tells stories about to frighten children, and you just learned that those stories are real." Tazrek stared at him with something like awe. "Impossible. Reapers were disbanded, eliminated. No, we were sleeping, hoping we would never be needed again. But you woke us up." Jiho's voice was cold, final. "Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to order your fleet to stand down. You're going to release every prisoner you've taken, and you're going to leave this sector and never return. Because if you don't, I promise you this, I'm not the only Reaper out there. And if you force us to wake the others, your entire organization will cease to exist." The warlord looked into Jiho's eyes and saw truth, saw certainty, saw death waiting patiently for a reason to strike. He had terrorized countless beings, had inspired fear across 3 sectors, but now he knew what real fear felt like. "I surrender," Tazrek whispered. Jiho restrained him and broadcast a message to the entire pirate fleet. "This is Reaper 7. Your warlord has surrendered. Stand down immediately or face elimination. You have 60 seconds to comply." The pirates, leaderless and terrified, surrendered, weapons powered down. 3 days after the attack, the Horizon's Edge docked at a major space station for repairs. The Earth Defense Fleet had escorted them the entire way, ensuring no other pirates tried their luck. Now, as crew members disembarked for temporary quarters, the station buzzed with rumors about what had happened. One human had defeated an entire pirate fleet. The story spread through the merchant lanes like fire. Some said it was propaganda. Others called it impossible. But those who had been aboard the Horizon's Edge knew the truth. They had seen it with their own eyes. Jiho stood in his temporary quarters looking at his reflection in the mirror. The armor was gone, packed away again. He wore simple civilian clothes. Just a maintenance worker. Just an ordinary man. But his eyes held something different now. He couldn't hide what he was anymore. The secret was out. A knock came at his door. He opened it to find Admiral Kwan standing in the corridor. The Admiral was a tall woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many wars. She wore no uniform, just civilian clothes like Jiho, but her bearing gave her away as military. "May I come in?" she asked. Jiho stepped aside. The Admiral entered and looked around the small room. Simple, clean, nothing personal. The room of someone who never stayed anywhere long. "You did good work out there," she said. "Saved a lot of lives. The Reaper program would be proud." "The Reaper program was supposed to be dead," Jiho replied quietly. "Officially, it is. But we both know that's not entirely true. There are 12 of you out there living under new identities. We leave you alone as long as you stay quiet. But when you activate a ghost protocol signal, we respond. Always." Kwan sat down in the room's only chair. "I'm here to offer you something. A chance to come back. We still maintain a small unit. Classified operations. Important work. You'd have support, resources, you wouldn't have to hide anymore." Jiho was quiet for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "No, I'm done killing. I did what I had to do to protect innocent people. But I won't go back to that life, not unless there's absolutely no other choice." "I understand." The Admiral stood. "But Jiho, you need to understand something. You can't outrun what you are. The galaxy knows about you now. Word is spreading. Some will fear you. Others will want to test themselves against you. And some will want to use you. You're going to have to make hard choices again. When that day comes, I'll be ready. But until then, I choose peace. I choose to be just a person fixing engines and living quietly." The Admiral nodded. "Fair enough. But know this. The other 11 Reapers received your signal. They know you're active. Some of them might reach out. Some might not. But you're not alone anymore. Remember that." She left, and Jiho was alone again with his thoughts. 11 other Reapers. 11 people like him hiding in plain sight. Living with the same guilt. The same memories. The same burden. Maybe the Admiral was right. Maybe he wasn't alone. Another knock came at his door. This time it was Hana. She stood in the corridor looking nervous but determined. "Can we talk?" Jiho let her in. She sat on the edge of his bed, hands clasped together. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, Hana broke the silence. "I was terrified of you. After I saw what you did, I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. I kept thinking about how the quiet man who fixed my workstation was also someone who could kill trained soldiers with his bare hands." Jiho looked down. "I understand. I'm sorry you had to see that side of me. Let me finish." Hana took a breath. "I was terrified. But then I started thinking. Really thinking. You saved all of us. Every single person on that ship is alive because of you. And I remembered something else. Something important." She looked up at him. "Monsters don't hesitate. Monsters don't show mercy. Monsters don't feel guilty about what they've done. But you do. I can see it in your eyes. You're not a monster. You're someone who had to do monstrous things to protect people. That's different." Jiho felt something break inside him. A wall he had built years ago. He had spent so long thinking of himself as a weapon. A tool, something less than human. But Hana saw him differently. Saw past the armor and the violence to the person underneath. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You don't know how much that means to me." "I think I do." Hana smiled. "And when you come back to work, I still expect you to help me with those engine calibrations. Being a legendary warrior doesn't get you out of maintenance duties." For the first time in days, Jiho laughed. A real laugh. It felt strange, foreign, but good. Captain Yura called a crew meeting the next day. Everyone gathered in the main assembly hall. There was tension in the air. Nobody knew what to expect. Davin stood at the back trying to be invisible. The captain had told him he was being discharged, but the process would take a few more days. Yura stood at the front of the hall with Security Chief Mira beside her. Jiho stood off to one side, still in civilian clothes. The crew stared at him with a mixture of awe, fear, and respect. "I want to address what happened," Yura began. "We were attacked by pirates. Many of us could have died, but we didn't, because one member of our crew fought back, protected us, saved us." She turned to Jiho. "I don't care what you were before you came aboard. I don't care what classification or program you were part of. What I care about is that you're a member of this crew. And you proved that when it mattered most." Scattered applause broke out. Some crew members still looked afraid, but others nodded in agreement. Slowly, the applause grew. Not everyone participated, but enough did to matter. "However," Yura continued, We need to acknowledge something. Jiho is not just a maintenance worker. He's a trained military operative, and having someone of his capabilities aboard makes some crew members uncomfortable. So I'm giving him a choice. Stay with us and help rebuild trust. Or transfer to another vessel. Either way, he has my respect and my thanks. All eyes turned to Jiho. He stood silent for a moment, considering. He could leave, start fresh somewhere else, go back to being nobody, or he could stay. Face the fear and discomfort. Try to prove that he was more than just a weapon. I'll stay, he said simply. If you'll have me. The meeting ended. Crew members filed out slowly. Some stopped to shake Jiho's hand or nod in acknowledgement. Others avoided him. It would take time to rebuild what had been broken. But it was a start. Days later, at a remote military outpost on the edge of known space, a woman named Sora sat in a small apartment watching news reports. She was in her late 30s with short black hair and scars that told stories of old battles. On her computer screen, reports about the Bloodfang Raiders incident played on repeat. One human defeated an entire pirate fleet. Legends of the Reaper program resurface. Questions about Earth's secret military operations. Sora closed the news reports and opened an encrypted communication channel. One by one, 10 other windows appeared on her screen. Faces she hadn't seen in years. Fellow Reapers. People who understood what she had been through. You all saw the news, she said. Jiho activated a ghost protocol. He's out in the open now. Which means we need to be ready. The galaxy is going to start asking questions about the Reaper program. About us. One of the faces on screen, a man with gray streaks in his hair, spoke up. What do you propose? We stay hidden. Live our lives. But we watch out for each other. Jiho proved something important. We're not just weapons. We're people who can choose to protect instead of destroy. And if the galaxy threatens us or our own, we remind them why they should fear humanity when pushed too far. The others nodded in agreement. They had spent years hiding from their past, but maybe it was time to accept it, to acknowledge that they would always be Reapers. The only question was what kind of Reapers they chose to be. Back on the horizon's edge, Jiho stood in the observation deck watching stars stream past in hyperspace. The ship was underway again, returning to its regular routes. Life was returning to normal, or as normal as it could be after everything that had happened. Hana joined him, 2 cups of station coffee in her hands. She offered him one. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Do you think things will ever really go back to normal? She asked. Jiho considered the question. No, but maybe that's okay. Maybe normal was never the goal. Maybe the goal was always just to find a place where we can be ourselves, scars and all. That's surprisingly wise for a maintenance worker. He smiled. I had a lot of time to think while hiding in ventilation shafts. They both laughed. It was a small moment, simple, human, but it meant everything. In his quarters, Jiho's armor remained locked away in its container. The skull helmet stared at nothing in the darkness. On the container's side, those old words still showed. Grim Reaper unit, if found, run. But maybe someday those words would change. Maybe instead of inspiring fear, they would inspire hope. Hope that even in the darkest moments, someone would stand up for those who couldn't fight back. Someone would choose to protect instead of destroy. Someone would be human in all the best and worst ways that word implied. Jiho touched the locker with one hand, feeling the cold metal under his palm. He was a Reaper. That would never change. But he was also a maintenance worker. A colleague, a friend, a person trying to find peace in a violent galaxy. And maybe that was enough. Maybe being both the warrior and the peacemaker was possible. Maybe he could carry the weight of his past while still building a future worth living.